This is the West Virginia Soccer Association Beyond the Pitch podcast on the WVSA Digital Network. From the Sport Pens International Studios in Charleston, West Virginia, here's your host, Marcus Cole.
Welcome to the podcast. We have another great show on tap. Before we welcome our guests, I want to remind you to like, subscribe, and share our program. This helps us get the word out to others and let them know that we're providing valuable information designed for soccer players, coaches, referees, and parents. And today we're going to be talking to the parents. One of our favorite guests on the show, Shay Haddow of Alpha Girl Confidence, is here. Shay, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, Marcus. Always love being on.
Now today, like I said, we're going to be talking about the parents. Now, you recently did a podcast because you have your own podcast, and it's a wonderful show. If you don't follow it, we recommend you make sure you search it out, the Alpha Girl Confidence podcast. It is amazing. Lots of great information being shared by Shay and her guests. And you had something on there which kind of spoke to me a little bit, and it was about bribing the children, the players. And it was really great because I remember back when my daughter played, when she was young, her grandparents would come in, I'll give you $5 if you score a goal. And, while that was great and well-meaning and stuff, and I get the idea why behind it and stuff, maybe that's not the best thing that we could be doing to motivate our kids. So tell us about that podcast, first of all, and what exactly you guys were talking about.
Yeah. So, it just came up because in one of the girls that I work with, it came up that one of the girls, I can't remember what she got, AirPods or like some gadget for, I think it was scoring goals. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is a really good topic. And then I had another parent reach out to me and say how the parents were starting to bribe their players, and it was starting to kind of separate the girls, and they were kind of just out for themselves to get the thing. And so I was like, what a great podcast it would be to actually talk about this. It's nothing that I've ever talked about before, and it's something that I don't think is really talked about at all, but it really can affect a player's motivation, and not just motivation in the short term, but like how they learn to be motivated in the long term, and how they're wired to like, I want to work hard for this extrinsic thing, or do I want to work hard, for myself? So I think it's a really important topic to discuss because it can really shape how, a kid views motivation.
Absolutely. And you bring up such a great point, and I didn't even think about it until you said it, is that kind of thing can start, putting chinks in the armor, so to speak, of a team of, if I score this goal, I'm going to get those AirPods and stuff. And now I'm not looking to make that extra pass that may benefit the team to whatever goal that they're trying to achieve. And I'm going to, launch the shot from 35 yards out as opposed to making that extra pass through. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, especially, right. And we're talking soccer and team sports here. It's like, it gives you the idea, it gives the player the idea that like, I'm in it for myself. I'm out for myself. Like if I want this reward that only I get, then I have to be the one to do it. And it doesn't involve the team. Like instead of what's best for the team, it's how can I get this reward? Right. And so the common goal of the team kind of goes out the window. And not only does that hurt the performance of the team, but more importantly, I would say hurts the chemistry of the team, right? Nobody likes someone that's just in it for themselves, right? A coach doesn't enjoy that. The other teammates don't enjoy that. So I think the biggest thing is it can start to degrade like the integrity and the camaraderie of a team.
What advice would you have for coaches if they see this dynamic start to creep up with their team? And because, like I said before, I'm not trying to demean parents or grandparents or anything like that. I get why they do it because they want to reward their granddaughter or grandson or whatever, that type of thing. But what can coaches do? What advice would you give to them?
Well, I would first say that if we're talking, like, we can talk about the maybe a positive, like if you're going to bribe, there are positive things you can do, which we can speak to coaches and parents, right? So parents, I'm going to kind of skip ahead to parents first, and then we can talk about coaches. But a lot of the time it's a monetary bribe, right? $5, a dollar, or, a gadget or something like that. So if you're going to bribe, number one, I think the most important thing, bribe, incentivize, whatever word you want to use. If you're going to do it, bribe the controllables. So don't bribe the goal, don't bribe the outcome, bribe the effort, bribe the attitude. So it's more like, if you go out and you try 3 new moves, then I'll give you $5. And we'll talk about, okay, what's a good way to actually a good way to make that more meaningful than just here's $5. But it's important to bribe the action and the behavior as opposed to the result, right? Because then it teaches the player that the only thing that matters is the result, right? And it teaches them to be so like outcome based and not process based, which creates a bit of a fixed mindset overall. So there's so many different things that go into it. So that's why it's important to find a way that you can do it. If you're going to do it, find a way to do it based on the controllables. Now, another cool thing that I was thinking about, like, okay, if we're going to bribe money, can we do it in a way where they're actually going to learn something from it? So maybe we learn how to save. Maybe you open a savings account. Like maybe you learn how to, you do this to teach your kid how to manage money. Or maybe you say, okay, if you try 3 new moves, I'm going to give you $5. And with that $5 or $20 or whatever it is, you get to choose a charity of your choice to give it to. So we're bribing, but we're bribing good behaviors. And we're also taking that money and doing something good with it, learning how to be good Samaritans, learning how to manage your money. So I would say if we're going to do it, that is a more productive and I would say healthier way for everybody to do it that way, instead of just like, oh, I want this $5 to go buy a squishy toy or something.
That's such a, I mean, that's an amazing way to look at it too. I mean, I love the philanthropy side of things
Right.
that, getting your kids involved in a charitable cause that they feel passionate about. And that way they're able to give to that charity or organization, whatever. And
Yeah.
also the investing type, because we've had people on this podcast talk
Yeah.
is we need to teach our kids better about investing and be able to
Absolutely.
manage their money better. And what a great way to do it. Not only you have and I like you use the word incentivize,
Yeah.
but I mean, do that, but you're also teaching them another lesson on top of that, which I think is extremely wonderful. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and then like it's also some parents may say, well, like it's hard. How do you measure? It's harder to measure effort. It's harder to measure attitude, right? Like, how do I measure if my kid is doing new moves? How do I measure if they're being a good teammate? So that's something that it's not like this, like white and black, they did it or they didn't do it. So use your best judgment, but it's like, we don't really care what the goal is for them to just get outside of their comfort zone, for them to learn how to be a good teammate. And when they have this more so incentivization that's not about them necessarily, where maybe I'm giving it away, then it's like they're working for something other than themselves. So it's like, I really want to give to kids with cancer, so I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to go do this thing so that I can get some money to help these kids with cancer. Like, I think it just develops a more well-rounded human being, to be honest.
Let me ask you this question. It just kind of popped into my head.
Mhm.
Would you recommend more of the incentive based things and doing it the way that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Or would you recommend doing more of the I caught you doing something great moment and rewarding the I caught you doing? I bring up this story to a number of people, and she was a collegiate player. She didn't play a whole lot, but she enjoyed being on the team. She loved the camaraderie. She loved being with the girls. She loved supporting them. She loved just everything about it. And her mom used to come to every single match that they played, and she would take pictures of her on the bench handing out water to the teammates, congratulating somebody when they came off the field. She would be the first one to greet them after the coach and things along that lines. And her mom was so proud of the
Mhm.
attitude that she had. Even though she played minimal minutes, she was probably the best teammate you could ever ask for. What do you think about either one of those?
I actually like that better. Like, if I was to say bribe or don't bribe, even if you're going to bribe, how we're talking about, I would just say I'd rather not. I like that of like, I caught you doing something good, because they're not expecting it. They're not doing the action just to get a reward. And that's where I think bribing goes wrong, is like, I'm only going to go do this thing so that I can get a reward. Like, no, that's not what we want to teach them. We want to teach them to do the right thing even when no one is watching. Like, that's real integrity, right? Do the right thing no matter what you're going to get out of it. So like, and that's why like bribing can go wrong, because then we're teaching them, oh, I only want to go do this thing when I know there's something in it for me, which can create the selfishness and just like, egocentric, whatever that word is, ego something.
Egocentrical. Yeah, absolutely.
Egocentrical. You're right. That's a really hard word to say. But yeah, I think I caught you doing something good. I've never heard of that before. So maybe it is once in a while, like you just pay attention to the small things. And you're like, hey, I saw you give your teammate a pat on the back after they made a mistake. And now we're going to go to Chick-fil-A or like whatever
Right, yeah,
it is.
absolutely.
Right. Like that would have been my ideal reward, was Chick-fil-A. But it's just like, yeah, I like that idea more. So like they don't know that it's coming. But it's a way for you to really praise this awesome behavior. Again, not the outcome. It's not like, oh, you got a goal, so I'm going to give you money. It's like, hey, you did this really awesome thing as a teammate. And so now I'm going to reward you by taking you somewhere or giving you money to invest or like whatever it is. I love that.
Obviously, Shay has a wonderful podcast. Talk to us a little bit about your podcast, where people can go and check it out.
Yeah, the Alpha Girl Confidence podcast. And this month, this show will probably release after May, but in May it was all mental health awareness, which I know you had a really good show around that. But it's a lot about not just like how to perform better on the field. It's a lot of like, how do you actually become more confident as a human being? How do you handle the challenges and the emotions of being a teenage girl, like being a teenage athlete? It's hard. And so I'm really big on like, how can we help girls develop into the most well-rounded human beings? The sport is such a small part of it. For me, it's like all the other stuff that's the most important. And if you're a confident person, if you're a loving person, then it'll kind of take care of itself on the field. And that's just a byproduct. So that's the podcast. I release a show every Wednesday on YouTube, and then, Apple and Spotify and all that.
And it's a wonderful show. I encourage everybody to go check it out and subscribe to her podcast. Like you said, you're probably as committed as we are to mental health and those types of issues. Like you mentioned, we just got done doing one on suicide. It's a subject that people don't want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And like I had mentioned in the podcast, that people don't want to talk about it because they think it's encouraging people to kill themselves. And it's we got to get over that. And because it's such a tragic thing that I think a lot of the times that we can prevent from happening. But yeah, I mean, you're so right. I mean, I have a daughter who just finished up her sophomore year in college. She plays for a D2 college soccer team. And just knowing her and knowing the struggles that her and her friends go through, I don't think that we get into it enough of talking about confidence issues and especially with women. It's an amazing dynamic, and I've learned it firsthand and learned so much through her and her friends of things that they think about that I, as a guy, would never think about in that situation. But I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful podcast that we encourage everybody to subscribe to Shay's podcast. Where can they go to? Oh, you said they can go to your website and find it from there too, right?
Yep. You can go to the website. It's right at the top, podcast. So yeah, there, YouTube, and then also Apple, and then Spotify. And then I also have a new YouTube series that I started called Inside of the Day with Shay, where I just do a quick, like less than 5 minute kind of insight of things that I'm learning myself that I think are powerful for girls and even parents to learn. So that's a good little series on YouTube to check out too.
Excellent. Check that out. As we kind of wrap things up here, Shay, if you could just give one piece of advice in regards to this bribing and incentivizing type thing, what would you tell parents and grandparents?
I would say to just be aware of how, whether you're doing it or not, how it's possibly affecting your child long term. Like not just, oh, I just want my kid to score more goals, but how is it affecting them long term? And really realizing that the most important thing that they want, more than money, more than AirPods, more than anything, is just your approval and your love. And so just being aware of how, regardless of how they perform or if they play the worst game ever, whatever, to just show them that you love them no matter what they do or what they don't do. I think that's the biggest thing.
That's such great advice. Shay Haddow of Alpha Girl Confidence, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I appreciate you doing that podcast and putting it out there for me to listen to and be like, yeah, we need to have Shay on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening to the show. Remember, make sure you like, subscribe, and share our program, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the West Virginia Soccer Association Beyond the Pitch podcast. You can catch a brand new episode every Thursday morning here on the WVSA Digital Network, or find us on our social media platforms at WV Soccer. Copyright 2022. All rights reserved.